About a month ago in Assisi, we celebrated Swami Kriyananda's moksha. And we had a special Sunday service. It came together with our community retreat. And so instead of having one light bearer doing the talk, we had 3 light bearers giving short talks. And it was all beautiful. Only the third talk by my colleague light bearer, was a wonderful talk, and she made everybody laugh, and it was really good. Only I didn't understand what she was saying, how that related to the reading that we had just left. And said, yes, in fact, at the last moment I discovered that I had taken the wrong reading. So there's always that little fear, and today I said, oh no, this is the right reading. So I would like to share with you some memories that I have of my father. And then we will see together how that ties into our theme today. I had the purest part of my memory of my father was when I was very young, maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I remember him as an original and loving father, very introverted, but there was something more deeper to our relationship. I come from Amsterdam, as you know, and that is absolutely the least religious city in the world, probably. And in fact, I was not baptized. There was no religion in the home, nothing. There were values. We loved classical music. We were artistically busy always. There were values. But then, religiously, that was just mocked at when it was on television or whatever. And my father also was very scientifically inclined. And I remember this, but I remember this especially later in my life when I was a little older. But the memory that I have of him as a child is totally different. Because even though nothing induced me to think of religion, I discovered Jesus somehow. There was a Bible, there was a New Testament in our home, and I would read that for myself and not understanding. And I would ask questions to my father. And there was a Catholic church around the corner. I lived in the southern part of Amsterdam, which is a very quiet neighborhood. And on special occasions, when we would take a walk together, I asked him to take me to that particular church. And like in every Catholic church, on the side there were the Stations of the Cross, and they were paintings. And when I close my eyes now, I am again 9 years old, and I can see those paintings, and I can see Jesus as a big light, always central in every painting. And I would ask my father questions about him, and he answered me, but there was something in his way of communicating with me, of answering me, that was very, very, very deep. It was very sincere. It was very involved, and he was not speaking at all as the anti-religious man that I got to know later on in life. Later on in life, there were issues in our relationship, like it happens occasionally between parents and their children, or between children and their parents. And so this memory sort of faded away and came in the background. He would write a lot of things, and the relationship was loving on the one hand, but also complicated. I always felt that he was I never felt that he was encouraging me in my development of my talents. And I've later often thought that maybe in past lives I had talents and I was using them for egoic ends. And that in this life I received no encouragement at all, neither for my music, neither for anything at all, because I had to learn to give those talents as service, to offer them up as service to God. But that realization came much later. When I was younger, I was just frustrated that I didn't have a father who would encourage me. He did the opposite very often. He competed with me. So, and even something more disturbing, you might say, happened when he passed away. So he did a great job dying. This sounds very strange, but I was with him. I had my finger on his third eye, and it was just beautiful. I have no traumatic memory at all. It was just the best. And those last days, he had kind words for everyone. I remember him saying to my sister and my mom, who were taking care of him, my oldest sister and my mom, I just trust you so completely. And he looked at me and said, "You're a good guy." And so he passed away. But then, and this is, how complicated or complex, I would say, human nature can be, we discovered he had written something about me, and that was terrible, actually. And so terrible that my sisters, when they read that, they felt sorry for me, terribly sorry for me, and they were very disappointed in him. How could he write these things about you? And somehow it didn't touch me at all, because I had done, you might say, my homework in the years preceding his demise. And this takes me back then to when I first met Swami Kriyananda. This was in Como, where he was, in 1985. And then there was a chant, and he encouraged me, of course, like he was then building the work in Europe. So he was magnetizing everyone who came to take a step of renunciation, step in and help build this work, especially younger people. And then he found out that I also spoke Italian, and so he encouraged me to stay. And I stayed for a few months, and then I went back to Amsterdam for various reasons. And in hindsight, one reason that I was giving myself was that I wanted to finish my studies, my university studies, my violin music studies and everything. But there was also a deeper thing, and that was that I had, on the one hand, experience with those early pioneers who were there. There was Kirtani was there, and Ram and Dhyana were there, and also Parvati was there. And they were, of course, dyed in the wool. They were really experienced, and I greatly drew from them, from that magnetism. But there was something in me that said, I'm not ready for this. Because I'm not ready, I felt in my heart that I was having issues with my parents and in myself, and that I could not embrace a spiritual family without first making sure that those issues with my earthly family or my biological family were also dissolved somehow. It's like what was just read, the whisper that was just read. It said, make me love my family more than myself, okay? And there was something within me that was not doing that, okay? I was feeling a lot of resistance towards my parents, a lot of maybe a little frustration also. And so I realized the type of work, someone actually inspired me to do it. We practice unconditional acceptance at Ananda. We practice it in our community. Unconditional acceptance of our gurubhais is a fundamental thing. And that takes us, our life together as a spiritual family, not just for the duration of a psychotherapy. No, it takes us all the way to the end, to the final sacrifice, death. Because in the long run, if acceptance, unconditional acceptance is enduring, if it continues no matter what happens, then the heart opens and feels, yes, this is real love. But I wasn't doing that with my own parents. I was not accepting them. And I remembered when Sri Yukteswar when Master Yogananda met Sri Yukteswar for the first time after, wonderful expressions of love, the first instruction came. And Master didn't like that instruction. He said to Yogananda, my first wish is that you go back to your family. And Master said, no. And then Sri Yukteswar said to Master, why exclude your relatives from your love of humanity? And that's the classic thing also with, I think, Aquarius and Leo, right? The Leo sign says, I love my family. I don't like was beyond that. And Aquarius said, I love humanity. It's my parents that I can't stand. So I started doing my homework, and I started working. I knew that unconditional acceptance was part of our spiritual homework as a family, as a spiritual family. And so I started to apply that on my parents. And I came to realize that acceptance has nothing to do with passivity. It's really, it requires a lot of self-correction continuously on a mental level. Okay? You have to, when the mind goes towards, I don't know, victim consciousness or frustration or criticism or judgment, you have to grab it and bring it back under your control. And of course, that was not easy, but I could feel that I was doing a really deep work, that was a real meditation. And it took me a few years, just working on unconditional acceptance of my family, of my parents, okay? So having done at a certain point, that became second nature to me. And I would come back to my spiritual family in Italy, and I started an Ananda center in Rome. And then I was much more ready to open up to the concept of spiritual family. But the two things go hand in hand. At a certain point, being in a spiritual family teaches us how to forgive, how to accept, how to relate to our earthly family. And by learning to accept and relate and forgive unconditionally our earthly family for whatever they may have done, maybe they haven't done anything wrong, but you still need to forgive and accept them as they are. My parents have really hadn't done anything wrong to me, really, on a deeper level. They were just good people trying to have a life, you know. But that practicing that, again, helps you to be better, to have a more sincere position in your spiritual family. So the two go hand in hand. So by the time after his death, that book came out, we discovered that text that he had written. My sisters were appalled, and I was fine. And I was able, through the power of acceptance that I had practiced, to choose the better part of him, the good part of him that has never been taken away from me. And that was how, as a little child, and I don't know how, because he never talked about it later on, he brought me in contact with Jesus. Just by telling that story, telling the story when he goes to Mount Gethsemane the last night and he cries. And he told that story with lots of drama, without exaggeration, with perfect tone, with perfect sincerity, with perfect feeling. And that has always stayed with me until today. And I just, I think this is part of the human comedy, or that the same person that I had this deep bond with later in life could also do completely different things. But I have also felt that maybe that was just that acceptance, and then being able to choose the better part. This was all under the guidance of my Heavenly Father, really. So I had another experience with this beautiful quote, Mary, one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen the good part or the better part that shall not be taken away from her. I remember I had later, when I was in Holland, I did a yoga teacher training course. You wouldn't believe it when you look at me, but I actually got a diploma in teaching yoga. I think I taught maybe 3 classes after I had my diploma. But there was a friend of mine, there was a lady, and she was happily married, they had a child, and we became friends. And I found out that before she got married, she had been a nun, a Catholic nun. And there were lots of things that had brought her to that, guided her towards that choice. But it turned out not to be a very happy choice. And she told the story that the man who later became her husband, he was a guest in the convent, like they were hosting people there and giving them food and lodgings. And this nun who was to be his wife came and very humbly would serve him at breakfast. And they were looking at each other. And then again the next day. At a certain point, he lost his patience and said, what did he say? Stop it with that comedy that you're playing all the time. And then she started thinking, yes, maybe I'm playing a comedy. And then she stopped being a nun. But later she said that her experiences in that monastery were not very nice and not very positive. But she said, I wonder what they had done with my Lord. So her devotion for Jesus had stayed. But it never surfaced. And by then I had made the very joyful discovery, of course, that Master comments Jesus' teachings, Swami comments Jesus' teachings. And I had read in Swami's book called Promise of Immortality, this story about Martha and Mary. And I was so thrilled by it. And I kept it for myself. There was then nobody that I could talk about with it. It was actually before I met Swami. And nobody knew about it. But then we were having this conversation, my friends and I. And I thought, let me see if I can talk about this. Because after all, she was a nun, even though she never spoke about it again. And so I started telling the story a little bit. Yes, and then Jesus came to the house of the sisters in Bethany. And you had Mary and you had Martha. And then she looked at me and she said, yes. And Mary has chosen the better part that shall not be taken away from her. A lot of our spiritual path, being on the spiritual path, if you want to put it very simply, is just always choosing the better part. And how you do that is largely that's also in many ways a very individual thing. Of course, we get tools, the masters give us tools, right? They give us meditation so that we can get in touch with that better part. And just see, when you go to work and you see people all worked up and yourself are all worked up and stressed, etc. That's just fake. That's not the better part. So we learn techniques. We learn, of course, we have a grace of these masters that envelops us when we go everywhere if we open up to it. And then during our day, we just have to remind ourselves, let me choose the better part here. And go within, go deep within. So Martha, on the other hand, stands for restlessness, which has been defined as the queen or the king of all bad habits. Okay, without restlessness, bad habits are neutralized, basically. But as long as there is restlessness, bad habits can always step in. All sorts of habits, addiction to, the internet or fillers or anything. So on a deeper level, this is also something that I read in Swami's book, the same book, by the way. It's been an important book for me, The Promise of Immortality. He describes the story of Judas, right? And we know that Judas, he betrayed Christ, but Master sheds a completely different life on Judas. He says, that story, that the consequences of that betrayal he had to pay for many, many, many years, centuries, and then eventually, because he was a great soul, because he had the power to attract a true master like Jesus, he was freed again at the end of the whole cycle of karmic retributions. But what Swami says, that retribution of bad karma is restlessness, and it is torturing restlessness. Why? We don't realize that because we're used to being restless. We just like it, It's better than being bored after all, But so we think restlessness, and then we go to fillers and everything. We think it's okay, but once you want to do the right thing. Okay, then you see that becomes when there is this intense restlessness that Judas had to experience as a result of as a consequence of his betrayal. It is sheer suffering. It's terrible. And if you look at restlessness in that way, that can motivate me, at least myself, to work on it and to really take the calm acceptance that we speak about in the Festival of Light, seriously, and to remind myself that Master says that calmness is the principal attribute of the soul. What is also missing when we are tortured by this quality of restlessness is that there is no true intimacy. When I told you the story about my father, there was a soul bond between him and me. And a soul bond just means that two souls have known each other in previous lives, and they recognize that. And it also means that God always plays a part in it. So two souls can develop a deep bond only when God is part of the equation, when he's in the middle there. And the beauty is intimacy. Sometimes I have thought of God, of those inner experiences. The beauty of them is that they are so intimate. They're more intimate than anything else that even physical closeness can give us. These rare moments, and then they become less rare when we go on our path of growth, of feeling something higher, where the soul finally steps in spite of all the restlessness. It is an intimacy, deeply, deeply satisfied for the heart. But on the other hand, getting back to Martha, she represents, I will redeem her in a few moments. My talk is almost over and I'll redeem her, don't worry. But she represents extreme restlessness, right? And missing the point by being so restless. And we can look at ourselves. I sometimes, we find all sorts of reasons. Sometimes we get even neurotic about our own meditation practice. We become restless because we have meditated only 45 minutes while we wanted to meditate for an hour, you know. And thank God that Martha didn't have a watch. I'd like to read something from my book about the relationship between time and restlessness. She didn't have a watch. If she had had a watch, she would have said, "Oh, the master is coming in 15 minutes and the room is not clean yet. Get the room clean," and like that, you know. And then looking at her watch again and looking at her watch again. So this is about time. It's a chapter that says patience to transcend time. Sri Yukteswar calls patience tapasya, has been translated as austerity. He translates it as holy patience. Holy patience. So concentration and relaxation are the only real time masters. I'll say it again. Concentration and relaxation are the only real time masters. And our capacity to employ them depends on the persistence of our tendency to resort to fillers. Concentration and relaxation are closely interrelated. By consciously relaxing the grip of emotional attachments on our burdened heart, our focus on anything we choose becomes ever new. And when it's new, it's interesting, right? A strong focus on one thing at a time can take the mind to those depths where the storms of emotions and the ripples of restlessness plaguing the surface aren't even perceived anymore. Time poses a mighty threat to human love. The innocent, lovable infant reaches his teenage years and becomes an alien in the home. Sorry if I'm so outspoken, that's just my nature. Romantic memories of courting days become buried under the weight of dirty diapers, mortgages, and tax payments. Women face the emotional challenges of menopause, while men often deal with other forms of midlife crisis. If we live long enough, old age, more than anything else, shows us all the ravaging effects of time. Only unruffled patience, both in enjoyment and in suffering, gives us the power to transcend these degradations. So, and Martha, being a disciple, she was able to do that. There is another scene a little later on in the gospel, and that is because Martha and Mary were sisters, but they had also a brother, Lazarus. And when their brother dies, Jesus comes. He's very courageous because he was risking, again, persecution. He comes, and of course, Mary is in the house. There were people had come, friends, Jews from Jerusalem, because Bethany is not far from Jerusalem, maybe 10 miles. And they had come to mourn with her. They were all together, and Mary wouldn't go out of the house. That's typically Mary, of course. But when Martha knew that Jesus was coming, of course, she jumped up and ran out, and she ran to the master and said, "If you had come earlier, this would never have happened." Okay, and then she starts crying, and the Jews who come out start crying, and then she goes and calls her sister, saying, "The rabbi is here. Come, come." And then Mary comes, and they come out together, and they're all crying together. And then, of course, the great miracle happens. So this is just something else that I've been working with these, or using these months after writing my book, or while writing my book. One way of choosing the better part, like a visualization for your meditation, I'm just giving this as a possibility, is to go back to our first ancestors, Adam and Eve, right? And so we've been naughty. We've been eating the apple, first Eve and then Adam. But we've decided not to be ashamed for God. So we're not covering ourselves anymore with fig leaves. We throw the fig leaves away, and we sit down in the garden, and we wait, naked, unashamed, unapologetically. We wait for our Heavenly Father to come to us. And completely alone. So I don't think they would do it as a couple. So Eve does it in her way, Adam does it in his way. And just when you meditate, I'm just giving this as a possibility to choose the better part, to feel again the intimacy with the Heavenly Father, who is just waiting. He can't wait for us to come back to him, really. We have expelled him by covering ourselves, by being ashamed. He can't come in when we are ashamed. So he can't wait. And if we want that intimacy, to reclaim that intimacy again with our Heavenly Father, just imagine I am Eve, or I am Adam, and I'm sitting alone. I'm the only human being on the planet. I'm sitting alone in the garden, unashamed, naked, waiting for my Heavenly Father to come back to me and give me the best part that shall never be taken away from me.